Shabbat Shalom, everyone. We're gathered together on the 28th of the third month on the Zadok Kohanim calendar found amongst the Dead Sea Scrolls, according to the reckoning as we comprehend it. And it is also, I believe it's the 10th of June, or sorry, it's the 11th of June on the Gregorian calendar. And we're fellowshipping today. We're going to be covering an interesting topic about what the Dead Sea Scrolls and writings of the renewed covenant have to say about the overseer or the maverickir, as you can read right in front of you. But this is a little bit of information from what we call the Damasqus Document afterwards, and what we're reading right now is part of the appendix from Jackson Snyder's version of the Recognitions of Clement, which is a letter that was attached to it from Clement to Jacob on the martyrdom of Kepha. And in the process of his relating it, he goes over what an overseer is supposed to be like, as explained by Kepha before he was taken. And for context, for anyone who might not know, Kepha was martyred around 63 AD during the reign of Nero by one of the proconsuls. That's actually explained in detail in the Apostolic Constitutions, and a second witness of his martyrdom is in Fox's Book of the Martyrs. But for right here, this is Clement to Jacob, the master and the Macareer, or the Maverickir of Mavekrim. Sorry, I butchered that. I always try to do it with the B. It's a mem bet. So I always try to do that with the B instead of the V, but I'm trying to get past that because it is legitimate. In the modern Hebrew, they'll use the wa, or as they say, the vav, with a V sound, but that's the Germanic, it's the influence of the High German sound shift when some of the Hebrews or the Yahudim had went into Europe and caused the German to shift from low to high, what they call, for the German-speaking Hebrews at the time. And the Yahudim that had went to the land started speaking what they call Yiddish, but it's High German. The only difference between High German and Yiddish is the characters they use for the letters, because it was the same language. But they took the influence of the Babylonian captivity and the way the language had changed for them there. And that's what caused the shift amongst the German-speaking peoples. So it's a pretty interesting phenomenon. But the point is that the wa never made a V sound in the classical Hebrew. The bet, however, did. It made a B or a V sound depending on the context of how it was used. And you can find that in the different ways they spell Abraham or Avraham, and the actual city of the name of the city of the Hebrews had built in Mitzrayim, for example, was, they call it, it's an acronym in scripture. They said it's the city of Ramses and Python, but that Ramses was built later and it was in the general location, so it was called by that, just like you'd call something New York or Yorktown, but before it was known as something else. It was called Avaris originally, and that's what they're actually doing archaeological digs in that area, and they've been doing it for a while now. But Avaris is the Abar, it's the city of the Hebrews. Abaros, right? That's just the Latin suffix for it, but would it be the Abarim or the Avari, Avir, if you would, for the Hebrew, the city of the Hebrews? Long story short, Avaris is a legitimate use of the bet with a V, and they do that with a few more, like Evrin right here with the Hebrews and other words. I don't know how often it was used. I'm not that much of an expert on the language myself. I'm still learning, but I am always going to be honest about the things that I'm pointing out and I'm learning. So just like they have Yaakov with a bet or a bet or a D or V interchangeably, they do it with some of those other words. But back on track here. Sorry about that. It says, Clement to Yaakov, the master, and the overseer of overseers, who rules Yerushalayim, the set-apart kahal, or assembly of the Evrim Hebrews, and the congregations everywhere, excellently rounded by the providence of Yahuwah, with the Zakanim, or elders and attendants, and the rest of the brothers, Shalom be always. If you're not familiar, Zakanim is the word for bearded ones, and that's what they had the title for the elders. So Kepha's martyrdom. It says, be it known to you, my master, that Shimon, who for the sake of the true belief and the most sure foundation of his doctrine was set apart to be the foundation of the kahal, and for this end was by Yahushua himself, with his truthful mouth, named Kepha, the first fruits of our master, the first of the sent ones or emissaries, to whom first the Father revealed the Son. And he's speaking of when our Mashiach had asked, and who do you say that I am? Right? It was Kepha that responded. Whom the Mashiach with good reason, Baruch, or blessed, and the called and elect, and associate at table and in the journeyings of Mashiach, the excellent and approved taught one, who, as being fittest of all, was commanded to enlighten the darker part of the world, namely the West, and was enabled to accomplish it. And to what extent do I lengthen my discourse, not wishing to indicate what is sad, which yet of necessity, though reluctantly, I must tell you, he himself, by reason of his immense love towards men, having come as far as Rome, clearly and publicly testifying in opposition to the immoral one who withstood him, meaning Simon the magician, that there is to be a good king over all the world, while saving men by his Elohim-inspired doctrine, himself by violence exchanged this present existence for life. But about that time, when he was about to die, the brothers being assembled together, he suddenly seized my hand and rose up and said in the presence of the kahal, or assembly, hear me, brothers and fellow servants, since as I have been taught by the master and teacher, Yahushua Mashiach, whose emissary I am, the day of my death is approaching. I lay hands upon this Clement as your overseer, and to him I entrust my chair of discourse, even to him who has journeyed with me from the beginning to the end, and thus has heard all my discourses, who, in a word, having had a share in all my trials, has been found steadfast in the belief, whom I have found above all others obedient, philanthropic, pure, learned, chaste, good, upright, large-hearted, and striving generously to bear the ingratitude of some of the taught ones. For this reason, I communicate to him the power of binding and loosing, so that with respect to everything that he will decree in the earth, it will be decreed in the skies, or Shemayim. For he will bind what ought to be bound, and loose what ought to be loosed, as knowing the role of the assembly, or kahal. Therefore hear him, as knowing that he who grieves the overseer of the truth sins against Mashiach and offends Yahuwah, the Father of all. For this reason he will not live, and therefore it becomes him who presides to hold the place of a physician, and not to cherish the rage of an irrational beast. While he thus spoke, I knelt to him and entreated him, declining the honor and the authority of the chair. But he answered, concerning this matter, do not ask me, for it has seemed to me to be good that thus it be, and all the more if you decline it. For this chair has not need of a presumptuous man, ambitious of occupying it, but of one obedient in conduct and deeply skilled in the word of Elohim. But show me a better than yourself, who has traveled more with me, and has heard more of my discourses, and has learned better the regulations of the Kahal, and I will not force you to do well against your will. But it will not be in your power to show me your superior, for you are the choice first fruits of the multitudes delivered through me. However, consider this further, that if you do not undertake the administration of the Kahal through fear of the danger of sin, you may be sure that you sin more when you have it in your power to help the righteous, who are, as it were, at sea and in danger, and you will not do so, providing only for your own interest and not for the common advantage of all. But that it behooves you altogether to undertake the danger, while I do not cease to ask it of you for the help of all, you well comprehend. The sooner, therefore, you consent, the sooner you will relieve me from anxiety. But I myself also, Clement, know the grievances and anxieties and dangers and reproaches that are appointed you from the uninstructed multitudes, and these you will be able to bear nobly, looking to the great reward of patience bestowed on you by Elohim. But also consider this fairly with me. When has Mashiach need of your aid? Now, when the immoral one has sworn war against his bride, or in the time to come, when he will reign victorious, having no need of further help? Is it not evident to anyone who has even the least comprehension that it is now? Therefore, with all good will, hasten in the time of the present necessity to do battle on the side of this good king, whose character it is to give great rewards after victory. Therefore, take the oversight gladly, and all the more in good time, because you have learned from me the administration of the assembly for the safety of the brothers who have taken refuge with us. However, I desire in the presence of all to remind you, for the sake of all, of the things belonging to the administration. It becomes you, living without reproach, with the greatest earnestness, to shake off all the cares of life, being neither a surety nor an advocate, nor involved in any other worldly business. For Mashiach does not desire to appoint you either a judge or an arbitrator in business, or a negotiator of the worldly affairs of the present life, lest being confined to the present cares of men, you should have opportunity by the word of truth to separate the good men from the bad. But let the taught ones perform these offices to one another, and not withdraw you from the discourses that are able to deliver. For as it is immoral for you to undertake worldly cares, and to omit the doing of what you have been commanded to do, so it is sin for every taught one if they do not stand by one another, even in worldly necessities. And if all do not comprehend to take order, that you be without care in respect of the things in which you ought to be, let them learn it from the attendants. that you may have the care of the kahal or assembly always, in order both to your administrating it well and to your holding forth the words of truth. Now, if you were occupied with worldly cares, you should deceive both yourself and your hearers, for not being able, on account of occupation, to point out the things that are advantageous. Both you should be punished as not having taught what was profitable, and they, not having learned, should perish by reason of ignorance. Why do you then preside over them without anxiety, so as to send forth seasonably the words that are able to deliver them? And so let them listen to you, knowing that whatever the ambassador of the truth will bind upon the earth is bound also in Shemayim, and what he will loose is loosed. But you will bind what should be bound, and loosed what should be loosed. And these and such like are the things that relate to you as overseer. And with respect to Zakanim or elders, take these instructions. Above all things, let them join the young at the proper time in marriage, anticipating the entanglements of youthful lusts. But neither let them neglect the marriage of those who are already old, for lust is vigorous even in some old men. Lest, therefore, fornication find a place among you, and bring upon you a grave pestilence. Take precaution and search, lest at any time the fire of adultery be secretly kindled among you. For adultery is a very terrible thing, even such that it holds the second place in respect of punishment, the first being assigned to those who are in error, even although they be chaste. Now, just for clarification, adultery in the physical sense is second in place of what he judges deserves the worst punishment. The first being those that commit spiritual adultery, or hold to the truth and cling to, or hold to the error in love, if you will, even though they be chaste in their body, because they're committing spiritual adultery. So that's the first error. And you can see that parallel throughout the original covenant writings, and especially in the epistles of being a chaste bride for Mashiach, as opposed to those that would come in bringing a different good news, if you will. But it says, why then do you, as elders of the Kahal, or assembly, exercise the spouse of Mashiach to chastity? By the spouse, I mean the body of the assembly. For if she is comprehended to be chaste by her royal bridegroom, she will obtain the greatest honor, and you, as wedding guests, will receive great commendation. And that's just like the parable that was given by Yahuchanan the immerser. And he said, can the friend of the bridegroom who stands and watches, he rejoices with him, right? But they will receive great commendation. But if she be caught having sinned, she herself indeed will be cast out, and you will suffer punishment, if at any time her sin has been through your negligence. Above all things, then, be careful about chastity, for fornication has been marked out as a bitter thing in the estimation of Yahuwah. But there are many forms of fornication, as also Clement himself will explain to you. The first is adultery, that a man should not enjoy his own wife alone, or that a woman should not enjoy her own husband alone. If anyone is chaste, he is able also to love his fellow man, on account of which he will obtain ageless mercy, because he will reap what he sows. As he's kind, compassionate, and loving towards his fellow man, so he will be receiving kindness, compassion, and mercy from above. For as adultery is a great evil, so showing love to other people is the greatest good. So love all your brothers with sober and compassionate eyes, performing to orphans the part of parents, to widows that of husbands, affording them subsistence with all kindliness, arranging marriages for those who are in their prime, and for those who are without a profession, the means of necessary support through employment, not through handouts that don't do anything but give them something to eat. Because we're enjoined that if a man was not willing to work, neither let him eat, right? That doesn't mean that you can't help the poor in their poverty when they have a need, but it's not supposed to be a continual thing when it's a capable man that is able to support himself. That's not a widow or an orphan, if you will. This is for those who are in their prime and for those who are without a profession, the means of necessary work through employment, giving work to the capable and alms to the incapable. So he makes the distinction clear right there. But I know that you will do these things if you fix love into your minds. And for its entrance, there is one only fit means, namely the common partaking of food. See to it then that you are frequently one another's guests as you are able, and that you may continue in it. For it is the cause of well-doing and well-doing of deliverance. Therefore, all of you present your provisions in common to all your brothers in Elohim, knowing that giving temporal things, you will receive ageless things. Much more, feed the hungry and give drink to the thirsty and clothing to the naked. Visit the sick, showing yourselves to those who are in prison. Help them as you are able, and receive strangers into your houses with all cheerfulness. However, not to speak in detail, love of fellow man will teach you to do everything that is good, and animosity to people suggests ill-doing to those who will not be delivered. Let the brothers who have causes to be settled not be judged by the worldly authorities, but let them by all means be reconciled by the elders of the assembly, yielding ready obedience to them. Moreover, also flee avarice or greed, inasmuch as it is able, under pretext of temporal gain, to deprive you of ageless birakoth or blessings. Carefully keep your balances, your measures, your weights, and the things belonging to your business, just or righteous. And that's something that you see all throughout the Proverbs if you take the time to read them. We usually read through Hokmah literature and the Psalms every morning, and we'll do an evening reading of whatever we're continuing in. So we'll cycle through the Proverbs, the Hokmah Shalomo, Ecclesiasticus, and sometimes we'll do the Shepherd of Hermas, but also the Book of Job. And that's how we keep those ones in our mind. And if you do that, it's very beneficial, especially you can knock out the Proverbs in a month. And we usually do it every 3rd, 6th, 9th, and 12th month because it's the one with 31 days. But we'll go through the others as well as we have time. Proverbs is probably one of the most read books in my household. And that's how these concepts that you see all throughout the epistles, especially in the letters, you'll find in the Proverbs most always, especially some of the other quotes that are like Kepha's in his epistle, you'll find in the Septuagint version, but not in the Masoretic text. You have to be mindful of that and check those out. But it says, be trustworthy with respect to your trusts. Moreover, you will preserve in doing these things and things similar to these until the end, if you have in your hearts an irreducible remembrance of the judgment that is from Elohim. So it's that fear that we're supposed to put before us. We keep the fear of the future judgment before our eyes, and we won't do the things that are going to have us end up there. For who would sin, being persuaded that at the end of life there is a judgment appointed by the righteous Elohim, who only now is long-suffering and good, that the good may in future enjoy forever unspeakable birakoth, or blessings. But the sinners, being found as evil, will obtain an eternity of unspeakable punishment. And indeed, it would be reasonable to doubt these things, or that these things are so, were it not that the foreteller of truth has said and sworn that it will be. And he swore that he did not come to judge men, but that they would be judged by the word he has spoken at the end. The other witness to that is when he was giving his Sermon on the Mount, or when he's reciting 3 times consecutively that it's better to lose an appendage or a member of your body than to sin, or to be cast into the fires of Gehenna, where the worm will not die and the fire will not be quenched. And he says it 3 times for emphasis, to make it known for certain that it is so. You can find the proof of that in the explanation from Yahusuf, or who they call Joseph, in the book of Genesis, when he's explaining to Pharaoh why he had 2 dreams. It was to emphasize the truth and the fact that it was really going to happen. So to continue here, it says, so then, being taught ones of the true foreteller, laying aside double-mindedness, from which comes ill-doing, eagerly undertake well-doing. But if any of you doubt concerning the things that I have said, that I have said are to be, let him confess it without shame, if he cares for his own inner being, and he will be satisfied by the overseer. But if he has believed rightly, let his conduct be with confidence, as fleeing from the great fire of condemnation and entering into the ageless good Malkuth of Elohim. Moreover, and this is the duties of the Azarim, it says, the Azar, or these would be helpers or attendants, if you will, what they call the deacons in the renewed covenant or the apostolic constitutions. It says, moreover, let the attendants of the kahal, or assembly, going about with intelligence, be as eyes to the overseer, carefully inquiring into the doings of each member of the assembly, ascertaining who is about to sin, in order that, being arrested with admonition by the overseer, he may to his benefit not accomplish the sin. Let them check the disorderly, that they may not desist from assembling to hear the discourses, so that they may be able to counteract by the word of truth those anxieties that fall upon the heart from every side by means of worldly casualties and evil communications, or sorry, worldly causalities, right? Causalties, my apologies, and evil communications. For if they long remain without instruction, they become fuel for the fire. And let them learn who are suffering under bodily disease, and let them bring them to the notice of the multitude who do not know of them, that they may visit them and supply their wants according to the judgment of the overseer. Yea, Though they do this without his knowledge, they do nothing amiss. These things then, and things like to these, let the attendants attend to. It's the duties of the Morim, which is a Mora is a teacher. Morim would be teachers. It says, let the Morim or teachers instruct, being first instructed. For it is a work relating to the inner beings of men. For the teacher of the word must comprehend the various judgments of the learners. The teachers must therefore be learned and irreproachable, of much experience and approved, as you will know that Clement is, who is to be your instructor after me. For it were too much for me now to go into details. However, if you be of one mind, you will be able to reach the haven of rest, where is the shalomful city of the great king. For the whole business of the congregation is like unto a great ship bearing through a violent storm, men who are of many places and who desire to inhabit the city of the good Malkuth, or the Tob kingdom, if you will. Let therefore Elohim be your shipmaster, and let the pilot be likened to Mashiach, the mate to the overseer, and the sailors to the attendants, the midshipmen to the teachers, the multitude of the brothers to the passengers, the world to the sea, the foul winds to temptations, persecutions, and dangers, and all manner of afflictions to the waves. The land winds and their squalls to the discourses of deceivers and false foretellers. The promontories and rugged rocks to the judges in high places threatening terrible things. The meetings of two seas and the wild places to unreasonable men and those who doubt of the promises of truth. Let hypocrites be regarded as like to pirates. Moreover, account the strong whirlpool and the Tartarian Charybdis and murderous wrecks and deadly founderings to be nothing but sins. In order, therefore, that sailing with a fair wind, you may safely reach the haven of the expected for city. Pray so as to be heard, but prayers become audible by good deeds. Let therefore the passengers remain quiet, sitting in their own places, lest by disorder they occasion rolling or careening. And that would be not to grumble or complain, right? Not to be seditious or cause schisms amongst the brethren. This is, let the midshipmen give heed to the fare. Let the attendants neglect nothing with which they are entrusted. Let the elders, like sailors, studiously arrange what is needful for each one. Let the overseer, as the mate, wakefully ponder the words of the pilot alone. Let Mashiach, even Yahushua, be loved as the pilot, and alone believed in the matters of which he speaks. And he's the word of Elohim. And let all pray to Elohim for the for a prosperous voyage. Let those sailing expect every tribulation, as traveling over a great and troubled sea. The world, sometimes indeed disheartening, persecuted, dispersed, hungry, thirsty, naked, hemmed in, and again, sometimes united, congregated, at rest, but also seasick, giddy, vomiting, that is, confessing sins, like disease producing bile. I mean the sins proceeding from bitterness and the evils accumulated from disorderly lusts, by the confession of which, as by vomiting, you are relieved from or relieved of your disease, obtaining healthful safety by means of carefulness. And that is well in line with some of the stuff that we've been going through this week, if you recall. But it says, but know all of you that the overseer labors more than you all, because each of you suffers his own affliction, but he his own and that of every one. So, Clement, preside as a helper to everyone according to your ability, being careful of the cares of all. Whence I know that in your undertaking the administration, I do not confer, but receive a favor. But take courage and bear it generously, as knowing that Yahuwah will recompense you when you enter the haven of rest, the greatest of birakot, or blessings, a reward that cannot be taken from you in proportion as you have undertaken more labor for the safety of all. And this would be a mention of the hundredfold reward that is also expounded on, alluded to by Shaul. It's expounded on in detail by Irenaeus in his Against Heresies, and it is given in detail also by Clement in his epistle, his first epistle on virginity, where those who, like him, like Shaul, like Yahuchanan the Immerser, or Eliyahu, they chose to abstain from having any concerns in this life. They never got married or had a wife to serve our Maker exclusively. And everyone who is like that or of that position is guaranteed a place in the Shamayim as before the Father, like the messengers of his presence. And that would be the hundredfold reward. Hanok, in his book, describes in detail what that will be like, where he, after he's changed into a messenger, and he gets to sing praises before the Father for some time. So if you want to look at that, you can. But to get back on track here, it says, so that if many of the brothers should hate you on account of your lofty righteousness, their hatred will not at all hurt you, but the love of the righteous Elohim will greatly benefit you. Therefore, endeavor to shake off the praise that arises from unrighteousness, and to obtain the profitable praise that is from Mashiach on account of righteous administration. And this is the people's duties. It says, having said this, and more than this, he looked again upon the multitude and said, and you also, my beloved brothers and fellow servants, be subject to the overseer of the truth in all things, knowing this, that he who grieves him has not received Mashiach, with whose chair he has been entrusted. And he who has not received Mashiach will be regarded as having despised the Father. So he will be cast out of the Tov Malkuth, or the good kingdom. On this account, endeavor to come to all the assemblies, lest as deserters you incur the charge of sin through the disheartening of your captain. So all of you think before all else of the things that relate to him, knowing this, that the immoral one, being the more hostile on account of every one of you, wars against him alone. If you didn't catch that, I'll read it one more time and then explain it. He says, so all of you think before all else of the things that relate to him, meaning the overseer, knowing this, that the immoral one, being the more hostile on account of every one of you, wars against him alone. And that's the benefit of having an overseer, or if you will, when it was in the monarchy during the times of David, if you will, it was in him. And now this function is, you can also see it to an extent in every family unit in the world, because the man or the head of the household who has Mashiach over him takes that position for his family. And that is explained in detail in the Shepherd of Hermas, when he is questioning why he's suffering for what his children and wife are doing. But you can also see that in the book of Gad the seer and in Chronicles, in the common scriptures, or the Bible, the scriptures that are common to us all, rather, where the people were sinning. So Yahuwah gave it to Satan to entice David, or the monarch, to number the people so that the plague could come upon them. And that was allowed to happen for what the people were doing. It says, do you therefore strive to live in affection towards him and in kindliness towards one another, and to obey him, in order that both he may be comforted and you may be delivered. It says, but some things also you ought of yourselves to consider, on account of his not being able to speak openly by reason of the plots, such as, if he be hostile to anyone, do not wait for his speaking, and do not take part with that man, but prudently follow the overseer's will, being enemies to those to whom he is an enemy, and not conversing with those with whom he does not converse, in order that every one, desiring to have you all as his friends, may be reconciled to him and be delivered, listening to his discourse. But if anyone remains a friend of those to whom he is an enemy, and speaks to those with whom he does not converse, he also himself is one of those who would waste the assembly, or kahal. For being with you in body, but not with you in judgment or in mind, he is against you, and is much worse than an open enemies from without, since with seeming friendship he disperses those who are within. Having thus spoken, he laid his hands upon me in the presence of all, and compelled me to sit in his own chair. And when I was seated, he immediately said to me, I entreat you in the presence of all the brothers here, that whenever I depart from this life, as depart I must, you send to Yaakov, the brother of the master, a brief account of your reasonings from your boyhood, and how from the beginning until now you have journeyed with me, hearing the discourses preached by me in every city, and seeing my deeds. And then at the end, you will not fail to inform him of the manner of my death, as I said before. For that event will not grieve him very much, when he knows that I obediently went through what it behooved me to suffer. And he will get the greatest comfort when he learns that not an unlearned man, or one ignorant of life-giving words, or not knowing the rule of the assembly, will be entrusted with the chair of the teacher after me. For the discourse of a deceiver destroys the inner beings of the multitudes who hear. Therefore, I, my master Jacob, having promised as I was ordered, have not failed to write in scrolls by chapters the greater part of his discourses in every city, which have been already written to you and sent by himself as for a token. And thus I dispatched them to you, inscribing them Clement's optimum of the popular preaching of Kepha, or Shimon Kepha. And that was the end of that one. So thank you for your time on that. I'm going to pause real quick and we're going to get to the other section that we were going to cover in just a moment. All right. Thank you, everyone. This part right here is from the first translation that was made available to men, and it's called the Complete Scrolls from the Dead Sea Scrolls. It was published in 1991, and this is a PDF of the Penguin edition. But in that, this is from the Damascus Document, specifically the section on the rules for the assembly, and then it goes into the rules for the guardian, or what they call the overseer. It says, those who follow these statutes in the age of wickedness until the coming of the Mashiach of Aharon and Yisrael shall form groups of at least 10 men, by thousands, hundreds, fifties, and tens. And again, if you've watched or if you've read the Maccabees, this is something that they did as well. And where the 10 are, there shall never be lacking a Kohen learned in the book of meditation. They shall be ruled, or they shall all be ruled by him. And this would be the position that our Mashiach takes as the pilot, right? But should he not be experienced in these matters, whereas one of the Luiim is experienced in them, then it shall be determined that all the members of the camp shall go and come according to the latter's word. But should there be a case of applying the law of leprosy to a man, then the Kohen shall come and shall stand in the camp, and the guardian or overseer shall instruct him in the exact interpretation of the law. Even if the Kohen is a simpleton, it is he who shall lock up, for theirs is the judgment. And that's also explained in the common scriptures, that it has to be of the sons of Aaron to do the judgment on who is clean and unclean, and determining those things as the position of Kohen, right? But right here, and in the same example, the overseers don't do anything of themselves, but they take from what's given. They bind what should be bound and loose what should be loosed, is already established from above by our Creator, who is the Kohen, giving the same example there, or pattern. But here is the rule for the guardian or overseer of the camp. He shall instruct the congregation in the works of Elohim. He shall cause them to consider his mighty deeds, and shall recount all the happenings of eternity to them, according to their explanation. He shall love them as a father loves his children, and shall carry them in all their distress like a shepherd his sheep. He shall loosen all the fetters which bind them, that in his congregation there may be none that are oppressed or broken. He shall examine every man entering his congregation with regard to his deeds, comprehension, strength, ability, and possessions, and shall inscribe him in his place according to his rank in the lot of light. And if you remember from what we've read in the recognitions already, he talks about how they all eat and sit down according to the order already established. He mentions it over and over again. Kepha himself already did that as he's teaching and preaching and going about his business. Everyone had their proper rank, and they all ate and sat according to it. They all did what they were supposed to by order, just as it's done here. But it was not as rigidly formal, if you will. Everyone was willingly consenting to the things without having to be dogmatic. It says, no member of the camp shall have authority to admit a man to the congregation against the decision of the guardian of the camp. So they love him whom he loves, and they hate him whom he hates, and they associate with the ones that he does, and they don't with who he doesn't, just like Clement was told by Kepha. That's what you'll see in just a moment. It says, no member of the covenant of Elohim shall give or receive anything from the sons of Dawn or Shahar. It says, or of the pit, Shahat, right? Except for payment. No man shall form any association for buying and selling without informing the guardian of the camp, and shall act on advice, and they shall not go astray. Likewise, he who marries. And this is what I was meaning. It's the guardian who shows who you should associate with for business or for doing things. And if you need to know why, you can look to Yahushaphat during the reign of the sovereigns there, where he had poor associations. He was approving, or he was in friendship and league with Ahaz, who was with Jezebel, or Jezebel, if you will, apostate from our Creator and under his wrath. So his business dealings with him were thwarted. His children that had illicit relations with his Ahaz's daughter, it caused problems for his family. And these are the things that the overseer has to be studious about and make sure that he's avoiding by his actions that others can follow. It says, likewise, or sorry, yeah, a woman, it breaks off advice. Likewise, he who divorces and he, the guardian, shall instruct their sons and their daughters in a spirit of humility, or a ruach of humility, and in loving kindness, and shall not keep anger towards them. This is the rule for the assembly of the camps during all the age of wickedness or iniquity. And whoever does not hold fast to these shall not be fit to dwell in the land, when the Mashiach of Aharon and Yisrael shall come at the end of days. Now, just for the picture, what they were expecting was his first advent. And the ones that were not fit to dwell in the land were the ones that were wiped out when the judgment came after he came. And it was the righteous remnant that escaped while everyone else went through the persecutions that were to come. It says, and these are the precepts. I'm sorry, real quick. And that is a type and shadow of what we're going through now, where we're in the age of wickedness, waiting for his second coming. And those who hold fast to these things or to the truth can have the same expectation, right? It says, and these are the precepts in which the master shall walk in his commerce with all the living, until Elohim shall visit the earth. As he said, there shall come upon you and upon your people and upon your father's house days such as has not come since Ephraim departed from Yahudah. But for whoever shall walk in these, the covenant of Elohim shall stand firm to deliver him from all the snares of the pit, whereas the foolish shall be punished. All right, and then it goes into more rules for the camps right there. And I don't think there's anything else for the guardian, but we will look real quick if you give me just a moment. All right, so we have this one last section here that is just the instructions for who's qualified to be a guardian, at least at that time. And this is also paralleled in the Apostolic Constitutions, which gives you age limits and other things required for overseers and everyone. As a parallel to that, completely unrelated in fact, but not in spirit or essence, if you will, is the age requirements or restrictions in the Constitution for our country, by the way. One more time. Oh, I'm recording already. Sorry about that. I was about to start it again. So here we go. This is the rules for the assembly. It says, they shall all be enrolled by name. First, the Kohanim. Second, the Lewiim, or Levites. Third, the Yisraeli, or Israelites, as they say. And fourth, the proselytes, or the mixed multitude that joined amongst them, right? And they shall be inscribed by name, one after the other. The Kohanim first, the Leviim second, the Israeli third, and the proselytes fourth. And thus shall they sit, and thus be questioned on all matters. And the Kohen who is appointed to head the congregation shall be from 30 to 60 years old, learned in the book of meditation and in the judgments of the law, so as to pronounce them correctly. The guardian of all the camps shall be from 30 to 50 years old, one who has mastered all the secrets of men and the languages of all their clans or families. Whoever enters the congregation shall do so according to his word, each in his rank, and whoever has anything to say with regard to any suit or judgment, let him say it to the guardian or overseer. And then it mentions about keeping their wages for the giving tithes here for the poor amongst the believers, but that's not really relevant to us. So Ab willing, or Father willing, you were all able to see that the guardian or overseer from the Dead Sea Scrolls here had a very almost perfect parallel with what overseers are in the renewed covenant, but in a larger scale, as the assembly was here single in the land and a united people in one spot. Now they're spread out all over the world in camps, as it's mentioned here, but the assemblies that were built up by the emissaries is sent out by Yahuwah, Yahushua, Mashiach. So thank you all for your time, and you have a wonderful Shabbat. We'll stop for questions now, and then if there's nothing else, we'll see you all next week.